He stood in the doorway like a ghost, shoulders slumped, holding a brown box that used to carry the printer from our spare room, and I didn't ask him what he was doing with it because the truth was, I already knew. I was sitting on the couch, one sock on, one off, a half glass of wine in my hand and Netflix still asking if I was still watching, but I couldn't take my eyes off the way he gripped the sides of that box, knuckles white, jaw clenched like he was chewing on the one sentence he didn't want to say out loud.
I should have said something.
I should have said a lot of things. But I just sat there and watched as he walked back into our bedroom, the sound of hangers scraping the rod, the closet door creaking, the soft but deliberate rustle of his life being dismantled piece by piece. I cried at work today, he said from the hallway, loud enough that I could hear but soft enough to pretend like he was just talking to himself, maybe even hoping I wouldn't respond. But I did. I laughed. I laughed like an idiot. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the awkwardness, maybe it was the part of me that had grown cold and impatient over the past few months, but whatever the reason, it came out sharp and dry and stupid. You're joking, right? I said, putting the glass down on the coffee table, noticing the way the condensation had already left a ring. You? Crying? At work? He didn't answer right away. I heard a drawer slam, then silence. I got laid off, he said finally, stepping into the room, that printer box now a sad makeshift suitcase filled with t-shirts and socks he'd folded like he was still pretending things were normal, like he still cared about wrinkles and cotton blends and all the little habits that used to make me roll my eyes. They called me in. Said the contract didn't renew. Budget cuts. Whatever the hell excuse they gave me. Doesn't matter. It's done. And what did I do? I scoffed. I looked at him, still holding that dumb box, and I crossed my arms like I was the one who should be angry. Oh, come on, I said. It's not the end of the world. You hated that job anyway. You're always saying how it was sucking your soul out through your ears. He stared at me, eyes red but not from crying, not anymore. No, that redness came from the kind of exhaustion you only get when you're done giving people the benefit of the doubt. You think this is funny? He asked, voice barely above a whisper, but somehow louder than the TV still buzzing in the background. I came home to tell you I lost everything today, and you're making jokes. I stood up, defensive without even realizing why, that tone in his voice lighting something angry inside me, some need to protect myself from the guilt that was already sinking into my bones like cold water. I'm not making jokes, I said, though we both knew I was lying. God, Julian. What do you want from me? You come home, drop this bomb, and I'm supposed to what? Break down and cry with you? You'll find something else. You always do. He blinked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Like maybe, in that moment, he realized something I hadn't let myself believe yet. You really don't get it, do you? He said, setting the box down on the floor with a soft thud that still managed to feel final. I didn't come home looking for a solution. I came home needing you. Just you. A little softness. A little support. I just needed you to care. And I didn't have an answer for that. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to care like that anymore. Somewhere between the open houses and mortgage closings, between my perfectly curated Instagram stories and the glass of Chardonnay I poured every night just to keep the noise out of my head, I forgot how to be someone who could stop long enough to really listen. I forgot how to be his person. So I said nothing. And that silence? That was the moment I lost him. He picked up the box again and walked past me like I was a stranger in the hallway of his childhood home. No threats. Just the creak of the door opening and the quiet click of it closing behind him, like it was nothing more than an ordinary exit. Except it wasn't. The next morning, the apartment was so quiet I could hear the pipes ticking in the walls. I stared at the spot where his shoes used to be by the front door, and the longer I stood there, the more it looked like something had been removed from the air itself. I don't even know what I expected, maybe a note, maybe something to suggest he was just cooling off, something that told me this wasn't real yet. But there was nothing. The last thing he took was the charger from the wall next to the bed. He didn't take his cologne. He didn't even take the sweatshirt I always stole when it got cold. He just left like it was a decision he had already made long before last night, and I was only just now being informed. I went through my morning routine like a robot. Washed my face, checked my emails, ignored 3 texts from clients, answered one from my coworker asking if I'd still be at the office meeting at 11, and told her yes, of course, as if nothing in my life had changed overnight. Because that's what I do. I show up. At the office, I smiled at the receptionist, made a joke about traffic, and sat through the meeting pretending to take notes when I wasn't hearing a word anyone said. Afterward, I stayed at my desk for almost an hour, clicking through listings, refreshing email, forwarding documents to buyers, doing everything I was supposed to do so that I wouldn't have to stop long enough to think. Around 3, I opened our shared calendar. Yes, we had one because Julian was organized and thoughtful like that, and deleted his dentist appointment on Friday.
I don't know why.
Maybe I wanted to erase a piece of him before he erased me. When I finally got home, there was a strange stillness that made me hesitate at the door before stepping in. His water bottle was still on the counter. The mug he used for tea still in the drying rack. For a second, I thought he might walk out from the bedroom, tired and apologetic, like we were both adults who had a fight and were ready to talk it out. But then I remembered his face when he said he needed me and I gave him sarcasm instead. I walked straight to the bedroom and checked my phone again. Nothing. Not even a missed call. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the empty space in the closet where his jackets used to hang, and I hated how obvious it was that he had been there and then wasn't. I texted him something pointless. "Did you take your passport?" Just so I'd have a reason to break the silence.
He didn't respond.
That night, I called Talia, my friend since college, who always picked up after 2 rings even when she was in the middle of dinner or on the treadmill. She answered, and I could hear the clink of silverware in the background. I told her I didn't want to talk about it, but then immediately started talking about it. I told her about how he just left. How he packed his box like he'd already practiced it. How he looked at me like I was some stranger who had just told him his dog died. I told her what I said. The laugh. The way I brushed him off. She didn't interrupt me. When I finally stopped, she said, "You really laughed?" "I didn't mean to," I said. "It just came out. You think that matters to him?" I stayed quiet. "You laughed, Naomi. He came home wrecked, and you treated it like he told you he lost a sock." "It wasn't like that."
It was exactly like that.
"And you know it." I wanted to hang up. I wanted to say she didn't understand, that she didn't see how things had been between us lately, how Julian had become this version of himself that was quiet all the time, distant even when we were close. He barely talked about anything beyond work, and when he did, it was always about things I didn't know how to respond to, his ideas for a side project, his frustrations with his manager, the pressure of pretending he liked the job he was clearly overqualified for. And I had been tired of it, of carrying every conversation, of asking questions he only half answered. I wanted to tell her that maybe I laughed because part of me had stopped knowing how to connect with him. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "He's being dramatic. He always does this thing where he shuts down instead of just saying how he feels." Talia sighed in a way that made me want to hang up again. "That's not what this is," she said. "You hurt him, and now he doesn't trust you with the hard stuff. And honestly, I don't know if I would either."
"Thanks," I said.
Really supportive. Support doesn't mean lying to you. I'm not going to pretend this wasn't a big deal just because you're my friend. You crossed a line and you know it. I ended the call. I didn't say goodbye. I stayed in the apartment for the rest of the night without turning on the lights. Just me and the soft hum of the fridge and the buzz of messages I didn't care to open. I sat on the couch and scrolled through old photos until I found one from a trip to Asheville last fall. He was wearing the same hoodie he didn't take with him. We were standing in front of that bookstore he loved, the one with the handwritten shelf labels and the cat that slept in the travel section. He had his arm around me, and I was smiling at the camera like nothing was wrong. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and setting it face down. It had been 4 days, and I was running out of things to pretend I was busy with. The clients, the listings, the fake smiles, I did them all with a kind of autopilot precision that felt more like avoiding than functioning. Every time I unlocked my phone, I hoped to see a missed call, or even just one of those cold, one-line texts Julian used to send when he was frustrated but still wanted to keep some connection. I would have taken "hope you're okay" or even "I need more time." But there was nothing. His name stayed buried in the call log where it had been since the night he left, and with every hour that passed, it felt more like a wall was being built between us, one brick at a time, and I wasn't sure who started it anymore. On the 5th day, I saw him. It wasn't planned. I had just finished showing a house to a couple who couldn't stop arguing over the size of the kitchen, and I was exhausted. I pulled into the parking lot of the co-op down the street to grab something for dinner because I hadn't cooked in days and couldn't stand the idea of another delivery order. I walked in, distracted, still answering a work email, and then I looked up and there he was, standing in front of the freezer aisle with a small basket in his hand, and his headphones still in like the rest of the world didn't exist. He didn't see me at first. He was reading a label, completely relaxed, his brow slightly furrowed the way it always got when he was trying to decide between brands. For a second, I froze. Then I walked toward him before my brain could catch up with my body. He looked up, and when he saw me, there was a pause like he was calculating something. Not whether to speak, he already knew he didn't want to. It was whether it would be worth the trouble. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice level. He pulled out one earbud and nodded. "Hey, that's it," I asked. "What do you want me to say, Naomi?" I looked around like the answer might be floating somewhere above the kale chips. "I don't know. Maybe tell me where the hell you've been staying." "I've been fine." "That's not what I asked." He looked down into his basket. I saw oat milk, bananas, some frozen dumplings. He always bought the same dumplings. "Is this how you're going to handle it?" I asked. "Just pretend like none of it happened?" "I'm not pretending anything," he said. "You made yourself clear." "I didn't mean it like that," I said too quickly. Julian laughed under his breath and shook his head. "You laughed, Naomi. I told you I lost my job, and you laughed like it was some joke I hadn't delivered the punchline to yet. You said it wasn't a big deal. You said I'd be fine. You didn't even ask if I was okay." I didn't know what to say. "You didn't try to say anything," he said. "That's the difference." I didn't respond. People were walking past us with carts and baskets like we weren't two people tearing something apart in the middle of a frozen food aisle. Julian looked at me again, and I hated how calm he looked. "I don't hate you," he said, like he was doing me a favor by saying it. "But I'm tired. I spent a lot of years being your safe place and your backup plan. I didn't realize how one-sided that was until now." "You left," I said. "You didn't give me a chance to explain. You didn't ask for one. I didn't know I had to." "That's the problem," he said. "You always think the people in your life are going to just stay no matter what you do." He turned to walk away, but I followed him to the self-checkout area, trying to keep my voice from cracking in front of strangers. "Are you seriously just done?" I asked. "I didn't say that." "But you're not coming back." He didn't answer for a second, then turned slightly toward me. "I don't think I can." "What does that even mean?" "It means I've been thinking about what it's like to be around someone who doesn't actually see me. And it feels worse than being alone." That hit in a way I wasn't ready for. I stood there while he scanned his oat milk like we were strangers, and I suddenly understood that this wasn't just about the job or the laugh or the fact that I didn't comfort him when he was falling apart. It was about everything I had taken from him over the last few years, without realizing I was doing it. All the ways I let him carry things I never once acknowledged. All the times he made space for me, and I never thought to make any for him. I wanted to say all of that, to explain how I'd gotten used to him always being there, and how I didn't even notice the damage I was doing until it was too late. But instead I watched him finish bagging his groceries, and when he walked out the door without saying anything else, I didn't follow. The first time I realized he wasn't just taking time to think, but was actively rewriting the story of us without me, was when I saw the profile. I wasn't even trying to find it, that's the part that made it worse. My coworker Kara was on her phone during our open house downtime, swiping through Hinge like it was part of her job, laughing at bios and badly lit selfies, and I looked over her shoulder to ask if she had the new key for the back gate. That's when I saw his face. Julian's. The same photo I took of him last spring on the porch when he was helping me paint my new open house signs, wearing that stupid old band tee and squinting because he refused to wear sunglasses. The same picture I had posted with a caption about Weekend Warriors and tagged him in. That photo. On a dating app. I didn't say anything to Kara. I don't even think she noticed. She swiped left, moved on to someone else, and I sat there trying not to look like something had just slammed into me. I excused myself to the hallway and opened the app one hadn't touched in 3 years. I didn't remember my password at first. When I finally got in, it only took 6 swipes before he showed up. Same photo, different words. Words I didn't recognize. His bio said he was looking for something intentional, honest, low drama. That last part felt deliberate, like he wanted me to see it, like he expected me to be there, reading it, stewing in it. I screenshotted it before I could stop myself, not because I wanted to confront him with it, but because I needed proof that it was real. I closed the app and sat on the edge of the bed that night trying to figure out what it meant. Was he really moving on already? Did he mean all that about needing time, or was that just something he said so he wouldn't have to deal with the guilt of walking out? I thought about texting him, something casual like, "So you're dating now?" but I knew how that would sound. I waited a few days. Then I did something I wasn't proud of. I sent him a message. It wasn't kind, and it wasn't calm. I told him I saw his profile, and that it was nice to know he was healing by trying to sleep with someone new. I told him the last 5 years apparently meant nothing if he could jump on an app a week after leaving. I told him he always talked about maturity and honesty, but that dating around while I was still sitting in the wreckage didn't seem like either of those things. I didn't give him a chance to respond before I blocked his number. That night, I put on a dress I hadn't worn in months and went out to the bar near our old apartment, the one with the terrible cocktails and overpriced fries. The one we used to avoid because the music was too loud. I didn't go to drink. I didn't go to meet anyone. I went because I knew if Julian was actually trying to build a new life, he'd be avoiding the places that reminded him of the old one. And I didn't want to be surrounded by anything that looked like him. I flirted with a bartender I didn't even find attractive. I let him compliment my dress and ask for my number, and I gave it, not because I wanted anything from him, but because I wanted to feel like I had control of something. I smiled and laughed and posted a photo to my story with the caption, "Good energy only," even though I hadn't felt good in days. Within an hour, 3 people responded to the story. One of them was an old coworker who used to have a thing for me. He asked if I was back on the market. I said maybe. That word felt heavy in my mouth. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Julian. Just a subject line, really? I opened it, expecting paragraphs of anger, but it was just one sentence. "So now we're keeping score?" I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew if I started, I wouldn't stop. He wanted to hurt me, or maybe he already had, and was just pointing out that I'd finally hit back. I closed the email and deleted it. Then I reopened the dating app. I matched with someone that night. We messaged back and forth for an hour. I barely read what he said. I just liked the feeling of having something to answer. 2 days later, I ran into Julian again. Not in the store, not by accident, but at a friend's birthday party I forgot we were both invited to. He saw me first. He nodded, then turned away before I could say anything. I saw him talking to someone I didn't know. She was tall, sharp-eyed, wearing boots that didn't match her outfit. She laughed at something he said and touched his arm in that way people do, when they want you to know they're interested. I didn't walk over. I didn't say hi. I left 20 minutes later and texted the birthday girl some excuse about work. In the Uber home, I watched their interaction on a loop in my head like it had been filmed just to mess with me. I wondered if she knew who I was. I wondered if he told her anything at all. When I got home, I poured a drink, turned off the lights, and didn't speak for the rest of the night. It had been 3 weeks since the night he left, and I still hadn't heard his voice again. Every conversation since then had happened in text, and even those were rare, short, measured. He wrote like someone who didn't want to give more than necessary, like someone who had figured out that silence did more damage than anger ever could. He hadn't blocked me, and I hadn't tried to apologize again. I wasn't sure if it would make a difference. Every time I thought about reaching out, I stopped myself because the truth was, I had already said what mattered the most when I laughed, and everything that came after didn't erase that. That was the moment he decided to start stepping out of our life. That was the moment I made it easier for him to walk away. One night, I saw that he'd removed me from the shared calendar. I wasn't even checking it for any reason. I just had the tab open from earlier that week, but suddenly it asked me for permission to access his entries. It was small, stupid, but it knocked the air out of me. I sat at the kitchen table for 15 minutes, just staring at the login prompt like it was proof I no longer belonged in the parts of his life he used to keep open to me without thinking.
I didn't message him about it.
What was I supposed to say? Hey, thanks for confirming it's over. I closed the browser and shut the laptop. The apartment was still too quiet. Everything still looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The routine was still there, work, laundry, dishes, but none of it felt solid anymore. It felt like I was living in a version of our home that had been emptied out and repackaged to look the same from a distance. I started sleeping on my side of the bed again. Not because I needed the space, but because I couldn't handle looking at the other side. I stopped leaving the bathroom door open. I stopped playing music while I made breakfast. I even stopped watching the shows we used to watch together because I couldn't sit through them without thinking about how he used to quote lines under his breath before they happened. It wasn't grief, exactly. It was the slow awareness that I had lost something I didn't know how to replace, and no matter how much I tried to act normal, it was still there under everything. One Sunday, I ran into his sister at the gas station. She was filling up her tank and didn't see me until I was already at the next pump. I thought about pretending not to notice her, but when she looked over, she gave me this polite nod that didn't match the way she used to hug me. I walked over because ignoring her would have felt worse. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She gave me a half smile. Hey, is he okay?
I asked.
She looked at me like she didn't want to be the one to answer that question. He's figuring stuff out, she said. He's with a friend now, staying out near Carrie. I nodded. Is he mad at me? She didn't answer right away. He's hurt, she said finally. I don't think it's about being mad. He just feels like you stopped being on his side. I didn't mean to. I know, she interrupted, not unkindly. But you did. That's the part that's hard to get around. I thanked her and walked back to my car.
She didn't say goodbye.
Later that day, I went through our old photos and found one from the year we moved in together. We were sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes, eating takeout straight from the containers because we hadn't unpacked anything yet. I was leaning into him, and he had this look on his face like he didn't care about anything except the fact that I was next to him. I looked so sure of myself in that picture, like someone who believed everything would work out just because she wanted it to. I remembered how we stayed up late that night talking about where we'd put the couch and how we'd paint the walls. We were excited about everything back then. Every decision felt like a beginning. I closed the album without saving anything and shut my phone off. The last time I tried to contact him was on a Thursday. I sent a message that just said, "I hope you're okay. I miss you." He didn't reply. I didn't send another. I told myself that if he ever decided to come back, he would have to be the one to start the conversation. But the longer I waited, the more I knew he wouldn't. He had made up his mind. He had packed his things. He had started building a life without me in it, one new grocery list and dating profile at a time. I still saw his name pop up now, and then friends mentioning him, coworkers asking if we were still together, photos tagged by mutual connections. But none of it brought him back. None of it changed what happened. I wanted to believe there would be some big moment, some confrontation where everything got said, and we figured it out, but life didn't give me that. It gave me silence. And I had to live with it. I still live in the same apartment. I still fold the laundry the way he liked, even though he's not here to care. I don't know why I do it. Maybe because some habits are easier than letting go. Maybe because it's the only thing left that makes it feel like he was ever really here. People ask if I'm seeing anyone, and I always say no.
They don't ask why.
Maybe they already know. The truth is, I don't think I'll ever stop regretting the moment I left. Not because it was cruel. Not because it pushed him away. But because it showed him exactly how far I had drifted from being the person he believed I was. And when someone realizes that about you, when they finally see you for what you are instead of what they hoped you'd be, there's no way back from it. You don't get to fix that. You just get to remember.